In this section, I will show you how to use Xcode to create your first project and run on an iOS simulator. In order to do this, we need Xcode. I am running Xcode 14. If you don't have Xcode, you can download it from the App Store and search. During the time of recording, I'm using a beta version of Xcode 14, just so this is valuable for longer. It's always better to go for the newest version, so you don't have to relearn where things are. There's some small changes. You can run Xcode 14 on macOS Ventura or on macOS 12.4 and higher, actually. So you don't need to update to better macOS versions like I did here on my separate computer. Because we are using SwiftUI, we can also make macOS apps. And I wanted to just also demo the newest features which are only available for macOS Ventura. Okay, so once you have downloaded and installed Xcode, we can open Xcode. So you see I have the beta version, which hopefully doesn't crash too often. This is the welcoming window for Xcode. If you have never opened this, you will not see any previous projects. So this is the stuff I already did. On the left side, you have the possibility to create a brand new project, which we are going to do in a minute. You can also clone an existing project. Maybe you have done some work that you want to also use for your new project or open an existing one. So we are creating a new project. So you can see we can make a lot of different apps. Now we have to choose what template we want to take advantage of. This gives you some presets, files and settings. So depending on if you want to make an iOS app, a macOS app, watchOS, or if you say I want to everything. Now with the updates for Xcode 14, this is even easier to add on the go. So I'm just going to, for you to see that it's possible, go for the iOS version. Under application, I am choosing app. This is the simple app, one screen. There's also other templates like a document app, or if you want to make a game, you can just, or here what is also interesting is a Swift Playgrounds app. If you're interested in also working on the iPad, that might be for you. I'm going to go with the simple app, so we see everything from scratch. Now I have to give it a name. This is a first project. You can just give it a name, whatever you want. I have actually multiple developer accounts for work too, and my private one. You can create a free account. This is also interesting if you want to run the app on your own device. And for example, if you want to upload it to the App Store, if you want to test it, if you want to distribute it. The next is the organization identifier. This is a preset because I have here a team name. So this needs to be unique because together with the product name, it creates a bundle identifier. This is the identifier if you want to upload it to the App Store. You make some changes and you upload it again. So the App Store knows, oh yeah, this is the same project, it's the same app. We have to update this. Then usually you don't need to touch these after the first one. The next is the interface. This is interesting. We always choose SwiftUI. If you choose storyboard, this is if you want to go the old UIKit way, but SwiftUI is much easier. The restriction is for the versions. If you choose this, you can only support iOS 14 and higher. But since we have now 14, 15 and 16 and the next ones, this is very good. There's probably less than 5% currently who are using lower versions than 14. So you're quite good in using this. Then the next one is core data. This is if you want to store something locally, if you want to persist information for the next time the app launches. If your data is quite complicated, I'm going to do this and include tests. I'm going to leave these ones out for now. This is an advanced topic. Press next, choose a location and save. Okay, this is the interface for Xcode. Now, on the left, you see the Navigator area with the files that it created per default for us. If you go into this content view.swift file, this is the only UI definition that we currently have. So it basically creates a Hello World app. This is very typical. On the right, it's just still running. Okay, now it's appearing. So you see hopefully also at some point a preview of what we created. You see here this Hello World text. Then on the toolbar on the top, you have here you can collapse the Navigator area because sometimes it's a lot of information at once. You can also collapse the right side. And we concentrate now on running this project properly. This is a preview of exactly this code, but we want to actually get better feeling and run this in a simulator. On the top, you see here, this is my project. This is the run button. I'm running this on this schema, and this is giving me per default the iPhone SE simulator. If you tap on this, you might not see as much as I have right now. You can go here under add additional simulators. Okay, I need to use, it's already telling me what simulator you want to create. Just going to cancel this for now. So here you have a tab between device. This is the devices I have. So I have an iPad, a very old iPhone SE, and my newer iPhone 13. You can set this up, but then you need to plug it in. Okay, it's now I'm trying to find it just because I didn't unlock it. Yeah, sometimes it's still busy. Okay, maybe we don't do this right now. Go to the simulators. Need to make this a little bit bigger. So I have here all these iPads. It pre-installs them, and the reason why I have multiple is which you probably don't have, is if you click on one, you see here it's running iOS 16. If you want to have different iOS versions, you need to install them. So if you click here on this plus button, and you can choose between different simulators. So for example, if you care about the watch, you can also install a watch. Okay, let's say I'm sticking here with the iPhone 13 mini. And then if you click on OS version, you can choose what you want to install. If you have only 16, it's not going to, in the very beginning you only have 16. If you click on download more simulator runtimes, you're going to the settings of Xcode. So this is also opening here, Xcode settings under the platform tab. You can now see what I installed. I have 16, 15.4, 14.2, 13.4. And it is important to know that they are taking quite a lot of space. So for example, the 14.2 is taking 10 gigabyte. So just be aware when you want to actually deploy something, actually ship something, that you at least have one for each. I would recommend that you have one for each major. So one for 13, 14, and 15. Okay, maybe you can skip the 13 because we don't need this for this example. So you can also delete them afterwards. So just install the ones you want by pressing here this plus, iOS, and then you can add another one. You see here it's 5 gigabyte, download and install. This is going to take some time because it's 5 gigabyte to install. Once this is there, you should be able to find it in this list and then add more. I am usually giving it a name with the iOS version, just because otherwise I don't know what I did here. If you have too many, you can just select them and delete them. Maybe you don't care so much about the iPads. Okay, so then you should have more. When I go here, you see I installed all this 14 and 15, but I don't have them in this list. This is because you only see the simulators that are matching the settings of the project you created. I said maybe we don't want to actually support iOS 13. Where do we set this? So I need to go to the Navigator, to my project, then here first project. And here you can see it's iOS deployment target. This means 16 and higher. This is also here in the targets, the first project. So you can have different targets for macOS and iOS, or you can share with the new feature the same target. Right now, you see here the destinations that they added automatically. So when you create a new project, it says, you want to make an iPhone app, an app that works on the iPhone, iPad, and designed for iPad means that it works as a native, more like a native app, so as if the app would directly run. This is because of the same chip architecture with M1 now. You can also add more here. And here you see I have more options for Mac. The disabled one is the one that is already there. More interesting, because we're using SwiftUI, is actually going for the first one. Use SwiftUI to power your Mac app, because then we can use all the SwiftUI, the newer features. It's just easier to customize what it does on macOS and iPad and iOS. So if I add this, enable this, now I get some warning here for this. This is because now I have two, I say I have two versions of Mac, and it's like, okay, We expect you to use the SwiftUI one mostly, so this is kind of obsolete. And I'm going to remove this. You would have had the same settings if I went for the platform app, the cross-platform app in the very beginning in the settings. After I changed this, now you see under minimum deployments, I have now one for iOS and one for macOS. If you want to run a macOS app on lower version, if you're depending on what your computer is running on, you can also switch to 12.4, and then you can also run this project on macOS. And here we can choose to go for 15. Now when I do this, I have a duplicate here in my project settings under info deployment target. And I'm going to delete this, and then it uses the default, which is here in my target. So now we can run this on 15, iOS 15. And if I go to select a simulator, my simulators for 15.4 appear, or any iOS 15 version appear. You might also see now that you have here a Mac appearing. You should also, so we can run this on different devices. Let's do this and go for, just going to use an iPhone. Choose an iPhone of your liking. So now it should start the simulator, which is sometimes a little bit slow. Down here, there's the debug area. I need to just press this tab. So on the right side, you see print statements. With some problems, the first statement is first project is in focus. And we see actually this hello world message. So this is one of the simulators. You can do some stuff like rotate it. Want to see how it looks in landscape mode. This is making screenshots. It saves it automatically on the desktop. So I'm just going to delete this to not have too much stuff. There's more things happening here. For example, this is under window physical size. This is very interesting because it scales depending on your screen. It scales the simulator to the correct size of your iPhone. So now if you're, okay, maybe you should have chosen something that is actually matching what you have. If you hold it next to it, it should be very similar. The idea is that you can pretend to touch with your hand and see how large it is or if it's readable or not. If the buttons are too small and you can't hit the right spots. So we're going to use this at some point later. Going to stop this. When you run this, the toolbar up here changes a little bit. There's some information on the right telling you, we're just running this project on this device. If you do this, we get a new button on the very left side, which is the stop button. So if I tap here, my project is stopped and this button actually leaves. Now we see the interface of this simulator. I did create a couple of more projects here, so they will start appearing. Per default, there is no app icon, so you see this empty ones. We're going to add one a little bit later. Now you can go ahead and just pick whatever you want. You can run this on an iPad. So it's here again telling me it's building, planning, and you see here the progress. Build succeeded, and some problems. I guess this should not happen. I think it's just a problem with... I have to go for the 16 versions right now, which are launched properly. So it's launching this project. Comes up. We don't have a launch screen yet, so that's why. It's just white. And we see this nice little hello world text. Okay, I'm going to stop this. And last, I'm going to switch to my Mac. Now this is depending, because I cannot have multiple simulators for Mac. It's basically fixed to the version that I have of my physical machine here, which is 13. So I'm running on the newest, not best one, because it's still buggy. Now this is going to be appearing here. I just need to find it because it's sometimes a little bit. Just going to close this. You see it's here. And now it's with this window. We have to work on, as you see, it was very small, so we have to work on giving it a default size in the beginning. When we run this on macOS, we get here a menu, for example, a new window, which is again too small, or some stuff like some other things like undo, cut and paste. I don't have any texts Okay, I'm going to stop this. The reason why I want to encourage you to run this on different devices and have a look is, per default, we only have one file here and everything is running on all of these devices, but it doesn't mean it looks always the same. Actually, it's set in a way that it's automatically doing some adjustments for us depending on the platform. For example, I'm going to add here an element. Actually, here on the top right, there's a plus button. Then on the elements, on the views, I'm going to choose button. So now this is creating a button with a name button. I need to zoom in a little bit. And then we can decide here on what action to do. I need to press enter. Okay, now we have this small button. If I run this again for Mac, actually I should have started with the other versions. I get my window, this is the last one, and this is a small button. Compare this to the size of my pointer, it's smaller, it's nice to click on it. It's nice and small, because our pointer size is small enough to actually hit this. Now comparing this to the iPhone, whichever I choose, I'm going to leave this up so you see still the old value for macOS on the left side. So on macOS, this button, the same element, looks quite different than on iOS. There's no border, for example, on iOS. Per default, we can add a border. It's quite convenient stuff around with this. Now you have the simulator, and I still had the physical size one, and now you can use your finger and try to see if it's actually how large your finger is compared to this button. Usually elements on iOS need to be much bigger because your finger is bigger than compared to a mouse pointer. You can be much more precise with a mouse pointer on macOS. The good thing is you don't need to take care of this too much, because the system is set up in a way that the standard elements is set up in a way that it automatically tries to adjust for these differences. And there's even more stuff going on when we talk about all the menu items. For example, if you're looking at the settings app, so this is just an example of where they used very similar elements. Now I did increase the font size of my Mac, so that's why the left side is quite large. But here you see some of these pickers. For example, going to accessibility, display. Here all these toggles on macOS, they are much smaller than the toggle on iOS, because with my pointer I can hit this. Or here the sliders. Here there is a much larger slider with this hit target than on macOS. So some of the elements look very different, some are pretty much the same, just a little bit larger or smaller. And we're going to see quite a few examples. Please feel free to try out running this project on different platforms to also get a feel of the user experience and understand some of the best practices. I would like to now talk about all the files. So on the left in the Navigator, in the File Navigator tab here, the Project Navigator, you have a couple of files per default. The first one is for settings. For example, here for this target, I can go and sign in capabilities. Press here on these capabilities. For example, if you want to use health kit, if you want to have some data from users about their health data, you actually need to add this capability, and this is because it's sensitive data and Apple wants to make sure we don't access it. So we have to actually ask the user. They've built this extra settings capabilities around it, so you need to add this here. Keychain sharing, wireless access, maps. There's also some other stuff which I'm not going to use. Here, this is automatically signed into my account. This just makes it easier to work with the App Store Connect, and some of the capabilities are disabled if you're not logged in and you don't have a paid developer account. If you go back here to general, there is some plus buttons on the right side. This is for extra configuration. For example, here under identity version, you can have different versions. For example, if I want to deploy this, if I want to publish this in the App Store for iOS, maybe I start by iOS. And I start by version 1.0, and then I have 1.1, 1.2, 2, and then I start with macOS, but I have different versions for macOS. You can now add this here, so then this would be 0.2, and now it appears there. Actually, I should have done this under release, not under debug. This small button, release, iOS, and macOS 2. This is every time you upload new version of your app, you need to actually increase this. So this is if you just want to play around right now, it's probably not so interesting, just for you to know that it's actually there. Here we have some settings for the app icon and the launch screen, which is not set yet. Going to do that a little bit later. Okay, there's a lot of things you can change here. Interesting also is here the localization. If you want to support more than one language, for example, German. Okay, maybe not. So then if you look at the main project, you have here 3 files and 1 subfolder. You can right click and show in Finder. So this is the folder. This is my first project. And when you want to open, you see all the folder structure. The one to open this project is this Xcode project file. This is the one that we need to add. If you are under project settings, there is also the package dependency. This is interesting if you need some functionality that somebody else already coded. There's some things that are convenient. You just want to use it. Once you add this, it's easier to find it again. I have here one which is introspect. So this is for SwiftUI to get more customization, to change some of the fonts or colors or something, some appearance. That is not shipped per default with SwiftUI. I can use this. If you don't have this before, you can also paste here near the GitHub file. I'm going to leave the link to this package in the description. Down here you can set what version, because this is also updating continuously, you want to have. So this means I'm taking everything that is higher equal to 0.1.4. Add this to this project and then add package. Now it's taking some time to download this and install. Now I have here this one entry. You can also select and delete it again if you want. On the left in my Navigator area, I have one more section for package dependencies, where this introspect is appearing. Usually they have some kind of README. Yeah, this is this one, where you can get more information how to install this. We used Package Manager, Swift Package Manager. Some of the things that are supported. An example, we're going to have a look later. As you see, it also has here some folders. And you can have a look in there. This is an example for just seeing different folder structures. If you want to in your own project, so all of the files that you want to use in your project need to be under this project name. So on the same level as the first project app. This is the entry point of your whole application, which you can see by the add main identifier, and then here this conforming to app. If you're used to other programming language, it's similar to object inheritance. You could just take advantage of whatever is defined in this app. In this case, it's actually not an object, it's a protocol, something very specific for Swift. But just know it is basically it means you get some functionality from this app protocol in this case. This is the entry point. And here you see this content view. If you right click, you can choose jump to definition. Now we are jumping to this content view. You see here we have now a different file selected. The content view is highlighted because we just jumped there. This is another one of these structs. It's similar to objects. It is one encapsulation. In this case, a view, so something visible. And the view needs to have something to show, which is with this body property here. So this is just some view that it wants to display. So we have here an image, the hello world text, and the button. On the right we have the preview. So all of the view, the visible parts will be some kind of view. If you want to create more of them, you can somewhere on the left side in the Navigator, just going to add here a new file. This is the same as file, new file with the shortcut Command N, or down here below me there's a small plus button, file. This gives me now another of these editors for templates, for file templates. All these visible parts that we are working on is this SwiftUI file. So this is a view, something visible. So I can select this. Say it's an example view. Select the location. So now we have another Hello World view. You can see here the text. It's starting on the right you see the preview of what's happening, what I coded in this view. Yes, I have a Hello World. Because at some point you have a lot of files, as you saw in this package, you can also create folders, or they're actually called group. So I can create a new group, or new group from selection, creating here a new folder, and I can give this a name, just calling it view. And you can have multiple stacked, so that's going to be convenient. My preview doesn't like me right now. Okay, and I think I forgot to properly set up something. So once we are there, I can already talk about this. Example view does not belong to any target. When I talked about earlier about you can have a different target, you can target either iOS or macOS, for example, or watchOS or tvOS. In this case, we had one target that shares all of them. You can check on the inspector, on the file inspector on the right. So this is this toggle on the very top right. In the first file inspector, you see under target membership that this is actually part of this project, of this target. So this is good. But there's one more thing we need to check. Going back to my first project, to this target. Under build faces, you have to here, under build faces, you search for the file. Always use. And it should actually appear here. And it says it's always in use. So for example, if you say I only want this file to actually use for iOS and not for macOS, because maybe it's something to do with the camera, which is very specific to iOS, then you wouldn't actually care about macOS, but this is not it. It's everything included. So let's see what I did wrong. Sometimes you have to go product, clean build folder. This is now cleaning all the caches and it's setting everything from the beginning. It's building the project from the beginning. So it's deleting all of the previous ones. So now it's done. If I run everything, all the files are built again. Okay, I can try another simulator. I can try to restart Xcode. It's probably just because of the beta version. Now I select my project again. Run the preview again. Okay, it's working now. I guess it's just small bug. I'm switching to an iPhone simulator. It's running this preview. You can see this here in the small activity indicator. Okay, now the preview works. Okay, if you have problems with file, you can go through the steps that I just did to check if it's really available for whatever you set, the platform, switch simulators, and ultimately restart Xcode. Clean the build folder and restart Xcode, or even restart your whole Mac sometimes. Okay, now you saw one of these example files for creating another view. So we have this kind of view files, this content view or this example view. We can also have files that are only concerning about data. For example, if you want to fetch some images from the network, from a server, we do that in a separate file. The next file is the assets. This is a file where you put all your images, for example. Just need to find an image. So I'm just using one of my cat's images. If you choose an image, it's better for the quality to have a PNG. So now I can just take this and drop it in the assets. And then it appears there and you see this image coming up. X, 2x and 3x. This means it will use it for different resolutions. The newer iPhone screens have a much finer pixel density, so higher resolution, and then you need bigger images to take advantage of this. If you don't want this, you can just go here in the inspector under the attributes inspector. When there's default, inherit, universal, here under scale, I use single scale. And then I have one of this. Once you added this image, I can, for example, go my example. Here on this plus button, we can, in the library, you can search for all these elements. So this is one that you use for the button. And then there is one here for images. This is from the package. So it also, you see, you can also have images from packages. Or here my mini-me. And then I can drag her. Okay, this is usually not working too well right now. Okay, now it added it where my cursor was, so this is not good. And I need to have here actually a VStack. Okay, this is a little bit big. So as I said, it's having every image has a natural resolution. So it's just, I dropped a very large image. Should have chosen something smaller. I can make this resizable and then scale to fit. With this, I'm telling the image, yeah, it can be resized. And the size I prefer is just make it so it fits on the screen. You can see it touches, the image is touching right and left. So now you can see mini-me perfectly fine in the on the screen. I should probably choose an image with a smaller resolution, so I don't, because it's a larger size and I don't want to, when you ship this kind of images, the download or the install size that you see in the App Store is just larger, and some people don't want to. They prefer smaller because it also it's less download and it's faster to install. Anyway, so you see here now this one image. You can add a lot more images. You can also group images. Then we have here one accent color. This is a special color that is used for the app. You can have multiple colors. If I click on this and then here on the right under color content, you can use something system teal color. This is used for some of the UI elements. If I run the project, and now you see it's loading and it's actually using the button here, is using this accent color. So there's a special setting for this color. Also, the icon looks like it. Interesting. You can play and choose a different color, maybe something more bright and happy. But definitely don't use for accent color black. It should be something colory, because otherwise the button needs to look clickable, and usually buttons from all the other apps, they have a color. So you can just use some bright, strong color. If you want to have more colors here, in order to add more of these assets, we can add here more colors or image sets, a new app icon. The app icon is this one. So this is quite new. Now we have a universal one image for the app icon, which needs to have this size. Going to show you this in the next step. And then we have here some preview content. Going to also have to add here launch screen. Now if you want to, because our project is a little bit boring, maybe you want to see something more interesting. If you go in the menu under help, developer documentation, this opens a new window with the documentation. So on the left you see, all of the frameworks. There's a lot more going on that we actually need. So we're looking for under app framework, SwiftUI. And you can expand this menu. So it's giving you some sample code and some information. So now here under Explore, SwiftUI sample apps, you have a lot of different apps. She didn't want to use this one. maybe up here you have a search, Fruta. Yeah, building a feature-rich app with SwiftUI. So this is clicking on this. We are under SwiftUI, app structure and behavior, Fruta. And here you have a download button. This is one of the apps that was developed for the developer conference. And there's also links, you can have a look there, depending on how good you're yet with this. So you can press you download. In order to run this properly, you need to actually configure. So you have also information about this here. I'm not going to run this, it's just more, so you see different folder structures. Trust and open. When we now have a look at this project, I have here multiple top layer folders. This is in contrast to the project we just created. And the problem is that the way they created structured projects for multiple platforms changed quite a bit. And this project was created with Xcode 13. It is a cross-platform app. I'm just mentioning this so you don't get confused why there are so many folders. If I have a look at the project settings, so this project, this is the new settings because I changed this. So under target, there's a lot of targets, and we have one for iOS, iOS all, iOS clips, macOS, and then here widgets. And on the this also is reflected up here when I select the schema. I have all of these options. If you just want to go for iOS, you can stick with this, and now you can only run for iOS. And for this kind of projects, you have to select a different schema if you want to run on macOS. Now, it's a little bit mixed up because I opened this with Xcode 14, and the settings are different. In contrast to the project with Xcode 14, where we have one target and one folder, one group, here I have for each of these targets a different folder. So for example, this iOS has a different navigation style. It's probably something. I should switch to iOS. Not sure if it's actually doing something. If you open the inspector, under the file inspector, here there's this target membership board where you see to which target this file belongs to. So basically it means that this is the one that is running for iOS. This is the main app. Then it has some different files, like entitlements are different for depending on platforms. For example, for macOS you have to explicitly ask for downloading or having access to the internet. Maybe I should stop this. In this kind of projects, it is all the shared code between these different platforms is in the shared folder. For example, the Fruta app. So this is the main file, which is again this add main conforming to app with this content view. I can jump to definition. For example, this file belongs to all of them, even the widgets. The way we created the project, we don't usually use the target membership. So the main components of this app are all in this shared folder. You can have a look at different views. For example, here we have one type of count button. And the thing is, because this is also another thing that changes with this previews, you have a lot of different, you can only see one of these previews right now. So that's why you would need to click on these buttons and see, oh, this is a minus button, this is a disabled button. Minus, and this is, I guess, a disabled minus button. So there is some changes between 13 and 14, but it won't affect too much, I think. Just if you want to explore some of these example projects, there's even other ones that are built with the Swift Package Manager, and then it's getting really weird with this project. But just have a look at what kind of files there are. Some of these files are for styling, like these buttons, or for more bringing things together, like here the way that views are stacked together. This is the app sidebar navigation. Can actually go to a different list. Okay, there's nothing. Menu. Okay, there's the menu. So for example, this would be one of this here, this file, the composition of all of these layers is defined. It's even a Buy with Apple button. Yeah, you need to, in order to be able to click this and be in the live preview. This is the left button here. Some of these projects can be very differently organized. It's very much of the taste of the developers. Also, where you put what kind of code and how complicated actually the app becomes. If you have one single view application with just one screen, it's probably quite easy to organize and find stuff later. After we just talked about the project Navigator, I want to talk about the other tabs that are in this left column. So the first one is all the files and resources, like adding images and assets, defining views or some useful other code, like these packages. The second tab is the source control navigator. Right now there's nothing in here. So we have two tabs. One is the changes and one is the repositories. Source control helps you, especially if you work with other people. It's done with source control. When I created a project, I said I didn't add source control. Now, to see this a little bit better, I'm going to reopen the previous project with the Fruta. So File, Open Recent, Fruta project. So again, I'm going into this Source Control Navigator under Repositories. And now my Fruta app actually appears. This is because I didn't actually code this. This was Apple. So if I here unfold this and select the main, you can see on the right all of these contributions from Apple. So somebody committed something, somebody added some code on, for example, the 4th of March 2022. Here you can see updates for WWDC and updates for Xcode 12.5. So this is basically the history of what they added to this code base. And when I say add, it means you can have some changes in some temporary changes. So for example, here, if I go in one of these files, maybe I should not go here. Where was the view? Actually, we never run this. Okay, I go in this movie menu view because here's a text menu movie. So the first thing that you see is, because this project is under source control, the nice thing is you directly see, oh, there's a change in this file with the small m here next to this. M stands for modified. If you add a file, I think it's an A for added. And also when you go then into this file, there's a small blue bar that tells you, oh yeah, you changed something here. In addition, you can go even more information by, on the top right corner, there's these two arrows here, enable code review. If you tap that, you see a comparison of what you actually changed. So on the right side, this is the old code, and on the left, this is the new code. And you see here, it's highlighting this one word that I added, smoothie. If I now go back to the source control tab, under changes, I see there's one local change to my menu. I undo this here. I'm going to another file. So for example, if you do a lot of changes and something goes wrong and you want to revert everything, or you want to at least know what you did, you can go into the source control file tab under changes. And then here you can select local changes to this one file and you see directly, oh, I did this. Now the question is, how do I undo this? You can go under right-clicking here and then discard changes in this file. So if I tap there, discard changes, it undoes everything that I did and it's fine. Now if you have multiple of these changes in all of these files, so I'm going to do here smoothie again, and then I change something here which makes this line very wrong now. Anything. And obviously my project will not build anymore now. You can go under the source code tab, discard all changes, or you go back here in the changes tab. I'm going to now use this discard all changes, discard. and everything is gone and it's in a perfect state again. Now, I'm showing you this because maybe you were using one of the projects and something goes really wrong and it takes you forever to go back to a properly working project. This is a good moment to actually start with source control. I know it's very early if you have never done this, but a little bit. The other thing that I wanted to show you here is this source control navigator in the repositories. When you work with multiple developers, you have different versions of your application, different branches. So I'm here in the main, and you can also create a new branch from main. So this is feature branch, test. And now I have here one of my new feature branches. So actually I used the folder, creation of a folder with this slash. I'm now in this branch, which you can see also up here, Fruta feature test branch. And we can also double click or right click, switch to this branch. So now I'm in the main branch again. Switch back to my feature branch. And if you do a lot of changes and maybe you're confident it's working and you want to keep it, we can commit. So all of these things are here under the source control tab. Okay, I'm going to close our little Fruta test. And you're hopefully a little bit more convinced this is good. So now under source control, in my first project, I don't have this. We didn't add this. The only option here is new Git repository. I tap on this, create Git repository for project. I say create, and it created this. Now under source control repositories, I have here my one project with all of the things that I did. It automatically selected everything that I did, so there's no changes. But now if I go here and change in my example view the hello world to hello Karin, because that's my name, I change this one file. And in my source control under changes, I see that I actually did this one change. And I'm like, okay, let's save this for later. I like this. Now in source control, I have more options. So I can again throw away everything. Or I can commit. So push and pull is if you add a remote repository. So if you want to share this with different people on different computers. I only want to have this locally, so I say commit. Now it selects this one file where I had my change. And you need to add now a commit message. So changed text hello world. Okay, you should make this very descriptive for yourself. I commit. And now I have committed these changes so it's permanent. If I now go in the repositories under branch main, so this is the one branch it created, I have here this one commit. Double clicking will bring me there what I did. So you also see here this commit message. So in case you have one project that I give you and you should do the source control stuff and you're like, what did I actually change recently? What was the difference between this? Maybe we changed some different settings. You can have a look here, double tap and have a look at what are different versions of this. Okay, now that we have this, so this is on the repositories. And okay, maybe I shouldn't overdo this right now. It's just for you to not run into too many problems and just save some time. The next tab is the symbol navigator. So this is all of your files. Don't really use this much. The search is very interesting. For example, you're like, I had something with a text. You can search all the files and go there. Oh yeah, here I use the text. Or you're like, I want to have everything with images. What did I do with these images? You can have a look on all your files. So this is searching all your code in your whole project. If you're interested in looking for a file, I need to go back to my project navigator and down here below my image, there's this filter and I can go content. No, this doesn't exist. Content. And now it's filtering all the files that are there. So I'm going to undo this. So we see all of our files. This is for because we're going to build quite complex projects, and if I jump around between the files and you're not sure where to find them, it's easy to look for them now. Then there's the issue navigator. This is this small exclamation mark. This is if things are not the way they're supposed to. There's two types of issues. Some of them are warnings, so your project will still build, and some of them are errors that it doesn't allow. For example, if here this image is not written in the correct way, if I have here images and I try to build this now, it automatically gives me a lot of red. So the first one is, maybe I just go another file. The first one is up here next to the progress. There's a small sign telling you how many errors or warnings. Then I tap on this and I automatically go to the issue inspector. And now I click here, I see which file I have this problem. I can click on this small, these warnings usually have a description. So you can see cannot find images in scope. So this name doesn't exist because this is a typo I just did. So I undo these images. Now it gets gray because it's evaluating again what happens, and it disappears because now it's fine. So you will have multiple of these warnings, just go through them, tap on them, and in case you really don't know, you can, with the source control thing, undo the changes you did previously. And then the next one is tests, the test navigator. So sometimes you want to try a certain feature again and again and again. You're working on you have multiple things the user can do in the app, and it's getting a little bit complicated to always manually restart the simulator, tap on this, go there, make sure all of these different versions working. So you can add automatic tests. So for the testing the UI flow, this is UI test, and then there's certain logic that you want to test. Maybe I have some data that I had to manipulate. For this, there's unit tests. So that you would add here, again with the small button, add new unit test or UI test. This is a little bit outside of the scope right now, but it's very useful. Then we have the debug navigator. So I need to actually restart the project. And now you see here there's something coming up. If I tap on this, okay, it's taking some time. This is giving you information about the how your app is performing. So is it using a lot of memory? If you load a lot of images, very large images, means that your app might be terminated because it's just your app crashes if you do that too much. You're using too much memory, or if you're doing too much computational things, if you're calculating something with images over and over and over again, it just keeps building up and you're just using all of the capacity, your app's going to be terminated, and meaning it's crashing. So you can have a look here, you see the time graph, the memory usage, how much you save on disk. Maybe you're saving these images actually somewhere, how much you're using the network. Now all of these are some basic profiling. There's also profiling in instruments that gives you more information. Right now I'm running anyway the simulator, so I'm using the CPU of my Mac. Ideally you would test this with a real device, because then you know, is this iPhone from 2017 actually capable of all of the things I want to do. So this is this tab. We are mainly doing here UI things, so it's probably not necessary to do this. Okay, then I go back to my content view. And the next tab is the breakpoint navigator. Now sometimes you do things and you want to know what exactly happens in that moment while your code is running. You can set breakpoints. So if I set here, if I tap here next to the line, you see here this blue tag. That's a breakpoint, and this is actually appearing here in my breakpoint navigator. I actually need to run this again. It's probably not the best. Okay, now this is because it wants to create this view. It's running this code, hits this breakpoint, and the code stops at this point. It's like a break at this point in your code base, in running your code. Probably need to go somewhere else. Usually you see on the left side some information that happens here. And on the right, you get more information. On the left, you see now, we are stopping here. I'm mostly showing this because maybe per accident you're hitting this. So we are using here this. You can now either disable or delete this breakpoint. Down here, there's more icons. and we can press the play button or the continue button. And now we are continuing all of our code base, and now our app is actually running. So this is just one thing to debug. There's a couple of other things down here, like environment overrides. You can make this dark or increase the font size. Accessibility, okay, maybe I should stop, but this is very convenient to fast switch between light and dark mode. For example, maybe you want to test if you actually can read the text. If you have always black text and then you have a black background, you cannot see it in dark mode. So this is the small environment overrides button down here. Otherwise, I'm not going to use much of this breakpoints. So there shouldn't be anything here. And the last is the build history. So for example, here, this is the point where I had a problem with the build because I messed it up on purpose. You see all the builds, everything that you did before. Okay, so this is this Navigator area, and we are mostly working here in this file navigator. I'm going to talk now more about view, what this actually is. So I am in the content view. You usually have a lot of these areas open in Xcode. So I'm going to close the debug area with this toggle. And I'm going to hide the inspector on the right with this toggle. So this is already much better. On the left I have the code editor. So this is the name of this file. I can also go back to previous files. Now you see I have a second tab open for my example view, so you can switch nicely between them. Then below this you can see the hierarchy or the position of this file. That's quite interesting if you have multiple of them. So you can also navigate in here for faster access. The next level is then what is in this file. I have the code editor, and on the right side you can see the canvas with the preview of what code I defined. This only works if you have a second, so there's two elements here. One is the struct content view conforming to view, so the visible part that we want to define. And down here, this is the content view preview conforming to preview provider. And Xcode is taking the content or the view here, this content view, this part to show on the canvas. If I change this to my example view, it updates. I'm going to undo this. So we see the main part again. This is usually generated automatically when we choose the template for view, SwiftUI view. On the top right corner, so this was the code review. And here is the editor. If you don't want to see the preview, you can choose to show editor only. Now I don't have a preview. I do want this canvas, so I tap here on canvas. And it comes back. Then there's a layout option. In some cases you might want to have depending on your screen, you want to have the canvas on the bottom. So you can go layout, canvas on the right or canvas on the bottom. Now, when is this actually interesting? For example, if I want to now show two files at the same time, I can choose here this plus, this editor, add editor on the right button. So now I have two of these open. Okay, I need to select the right one and then tap on example view. So now on the right side I have the example view open, on the left it's the content view. In the preview you can see there's here this blue box highlighting the content view name. Because this is the content view. And on the right we are showing the example view, that's why it's called here example view. Okay, it's taking a little bit more time. I'm going to close this with this close button here. And I'm changing the layout back to on the right. You can also choose here. The other one that is interesting is the minimap. So this is a mini map of what you actually defined. So if you hover over here, you can see that I have here a body and a preview. So you can also tap on this in the minimap and then it jumps there. Currently it's not a lot, so I'm going to unshow the minimap. Especially if this is more interesting when you work with large files. Okay, so now we have a little bit more organization part, and we can talk about the view actually here. So the type of a view is a struct. If you know, it's very similar to, this is special encapsulation in Swift, similar on the same level as an object, a class. Structs are not so easily changeable. They're usually used for data types or like data classes. And in this case, they choose to use structs as views because they can understand, or Xcode can better understand when something changes and then update the screen. We are using here this conformance to view. This is a protocol. It's very similar to inheritance in classes. And we can take advantage of this view part. I am importing here SwiftUI, so we are only doing here SwiftUI views. You can also use UIKit for iOS. A view is a basic UI element, and the one thing it needs to have is something to show, some visible element. And in order to conform to this view, to conform being a view, it needs to have something visible. And the way that Xcode, or that is actually SwiftUI is generating the view part, is calling this body. This is a property. And Swift is a strongly typed language, so we need to have some kind of, it needs to have some type. This body needs to be of some type, and we want to have something visible. They're using some view, something that behaves like a view that can be shown on the screen. And inside of this view, we can define then the UI parts. So we had here an image, a text, and a button. These are single elements. But we also have some kind of containers that bring elements together, like this VStack. There's a lot of other ones, like an HStack, and that would be horizontally aligning them. If this is actually updating at some point. So now all of these elements are horizontally together. I'm going to go back to a VStack. I'm going to talk a lot more about the layout and the stacks and the layout section. So we have this building blocks of image, text, and button in this case. And I have here these two modifiers. They're called view modifiers, because I have this basic element that I want to slightly change to my liking. For example, I have here a text, and I want to change this. I type afterwards dot, and I see all the different possibilities to modify this. What I can change with a text. There's a lot of modifiers, and Xcode in this completion will suggest you the ones that make the most sense for this view, for the text. The text wants to, some of the properties that you might want to change is the foreground color. So this is a type color. We can use, because it expects a color, type dot, and it automatically knows its type of color. So we can also make this here cyan. Oh no, actually this is probably not good. We can make it blue. And this is getting a different blue. I'm going to zoom in with this plus here. Okay, maybe I should make it black just for now. Then we can make it bold, or I can change the font. So this expects some kind of font. And if I press, I can write font dot title. This is now using the system font. There's a large title. So the first way of adding code is by simply typing it. You can also use one of the inspector features. So if you hold the command key and tap on this text, I get a lot more options. So here, this is where I see jump to definition, show quick help, edit all, and here this is the show SwiftUI inspector. So I can now inspect this. I could change the text. I can add some accessibility. This is the font. Then I just add it. We can change here the font weight to be heavy, and the text becomes heavy. Actually, you need to leave this, and you see I actually added here one of these modifiers. So it's an easier way of finding this code. I can see the same inspector on if I open here the inspector area and go under attribute inspector. So I can also change the text here using my name. And now it changed in the code and on the preview. So this is all the same modifiers with alignment. Then here there's something like padding, so I can actually add a padding around this, which means maybe I do to all sides. I tapped on all of them and then I'm adding a padding of 20. So this added this code snippet. So there's a little bit more space between these elements. Now these are the inspection of this very specific text. This looks different if I tap here on the image. I have here some kind of aspect ratio or render mode, resizing options. I go back to the text. So you see there's some specific way of changing this view. But there's also a lot of modifier that can be applied to all kinds of views. For example, this padding, I could also add this to an image. In order to find more, they have down here the option to add modifiers. If you tap on this, it gets active. And we can have a look at what you can do. I can change the opacity. I can make this really blurry, add a border, change the brightness, change the contrast, add a shadow. Okay, maybe I just use a border. Now you see it added one more section with a black border, and I can change this to a yellow border and change the line width. Because this is a little bit less space, I'm going to hide the left navigator area with this show navigator button. So now I have here a yellow border. I can edit this here in text. This is just convenient, or in the inspector. You can also edit this in the canvas directly, and for this I need to go away from the live preview to the selectable one. Now I click on my text and show SwiftUI inspector, and I can also edit things here, like increase the padding to 25 or 22, and it actually changed it. So going back to 20, then there is the Xcode library. We have a small plus button above the canvas with 6 tabs. So the first one is some elements. Here, for example, I can have a button, or should be also text. Yeah, a secure text fields. This is for passwords, text fields, text editor, or some kind of button. Sign in with Apple button. This is a very special one. We also have some layout elements like this stacks, the H-stick that we had a look at. So we have to go through all of them. Some kind of colors. So for example, I can take these and drag it actually on in the code. So now we have this whole area filled with the color gradient between my text and the button down here. This is because some of these views, they like to be bigger, like the image, it wants to expand, and gradients or colors want to be very big. So if we go here in the inspector, I can fix the size to 100 to 100. So now it's not extremely big. So I can go in the Xcode library just to pick something. Need to find something that is actually interesting. I can also use here a color. So now I drag this on the canvas. When I do this, it wants to know where it's supposed to put it. So should this color be to the right of all of these elements, or just to the right of my title, or to the right of this button, below, only below there, or to the left? So I'm going to drop it to the right side of this gradient. Now it's because it's also a color as a view, and it's again one of the ones that wants to be really big. It takes all this space. You see here it added it to the code. Just going to add the same frame. Now I have here this gradient and this color. If you have this blue highlighted, you can tap on it and press enter, and then it uses the same value. So tap, enter, 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 enter. I have now these two color areas, and they're aligned horizontally because I dragged it on the canvas with these blue lines. I was already selecting how I want to align things, and conveniently Xcode provided some code snippet for this, so it added here this H stack around these two views. When I select it, it also gets here this blue border showing me, oh yeah, you're selecting the code you have is this area. So you have quite a few options to change this. We have here the text. You can work on the canvas and the inspector and on the library. You can have all of these elements, and we can change the layout between them, and we can modify them with these view modifiers. For some of these modifiers, it's important to know in which order we are using them. For example, the font, it's definitely going to the text. The foreground color, actually I have font and font weight, but this padding and this border matter. So for example, if I take the padding and apply it after I apply the border, now you see the border is directly applied to the text itself, to the area around the text, only the text that is only consumed by the text. So I apply first the border and then I add a padding. Whereas if I first add a padding around this text, the view that this border sees is the text including the padding. So for some of these modifications, it really depends on the order that you're doing this. Another way of adding this layout, if you hold the Command key and tap on one of these elements like the text, I get here a bed in VStack and HStack. And if I use this, I have here an HStack around it, and I can add another text which appears on the right side of my other text. So you can embed this in different containers. And we also have here the option to create a subview. So now this has moved the code that I had used and moved it in a separate view. I'm going to extracted view is not really the name I want to go for. So I can command click and choose rename. I need to wait until it finds all of the instances, and then I can use title view. So now I have this view in there. The one thing that I might want to be able to change is the actual title. So this is this title property. In order to get the text, we can create a property outside of the body, string. And I'm going to cut this part out and use the text property here. So now it should give me an error saying missing arguments, and every time there's a fix, I'm going to take advantage of this and press the fix button. Now it added this argument, and I can paste the hello car in here. We could also move this property outside. Sometimes it's good to leave all the constant properties outside. So this is my title text, and then I'm going to use this here. My view didn't actually change. I did not change this here. Now if you don't want to have this title view in the same file, because maybe you have a lot of them here, that's a bit inconvenient, and we can move this into a separate file. In my view folder, I select new file. SwiftUI view is a visible part. This is a title view. Now I can cut this from my content view and paste it into this file. It's complaining because I had now two files with the same name. Pasting this in here. Again, in the preview, it wants to create this, and I add this. So this is adding here whatever text you want. This is only valid for the preview. Okay, we talked now about changing this one file, this one view a little bit. If you run your project, you still should be able to build. Sometimes with SwiftUI I work a lot with the preview, but occasionally you should build the project. If it's not working, also try to clean. So this would be product clean build folder. Something's off. Okay, everything is there. And this is looking interesting. Just a little demo of the different things we can add. I'm going to close this debug area. The last thing is, because you see here now I modified some of these files, like my content view, and here next to the title you see this A for edit. Just going to commit, edit subview, and commit these 3 files. Just a small reminder that you take advantage of source control. Regarding those views that I briefly talked about, we're going to go much more in detail in the upcoming sections for looking at all the different ways of changing texts, layouts, images, and resources. There's a lot to uncover for all of these topics. I'm going to talk now more specifically about the preview. So this is the area on the right side next to my code. Starting up with this zoom in and zoom out. So this is probably better just for now. This is 1:1. Or zoom in. Okay, maybe I just go to a size that fits this. You can see that right now I have here a preview post. Usually it's live, if I'm in the live one. So this is this on the bottom left, this is this live button. That means whenever I change something, it directly live edits this. So you see the text changing directly in the canvas. Sometimes you need to press the resume button, but this is it's very minor. Then we have here this selectable. Now I can actually tap on the canvas and this small blue border is appearing. Maybe I go for the text. There's a small blue border appearing. It says, okay, you selected this. And on the left in the text, it's actually highlighting this. I can also select something here and the visible part on the canvas is highlighted. This is especially interesting if you are like, I only want to tweak this little part, but I have so much code, I don't really know. How do I change this button? The button is down there. So it's a little bit faster. Then we have here variants. So for example, in some cases I'm doing stuff and I want to just verify that everything works for dark mode. And it doesn't too well. Sorry. So we have the light one on the left. You have this descriptions here and the dark one on the right. And I don't see my title. This is because, where is this title? Yeah, now I'm not in the selectable anymore. I'm going back to the selectable. Select my title. I need to change something in my title. Actually, I want to do this together with the other one. So I'm going to use this pin here. That means it's going to keep this preview for wherever I go in the project. Go back to the content view. And I need to... So now I have here these 2 previews where I can switch very fast between. Okay, maybe I should have done this in the other direction. So the whole point was that in my title view, I have here this fixed foreground color black. If I take this out, it means it's always black for light and dark mode. And if in dark mode I have a black text with a black background, which is not really good. I unpin this, just going back, so I don't see all of these previews. Now I have this, I go back to my color scheme variants, and my text is appearing or is visible, it's readable. I have now a white text on a black background. You can also check different variants, for example, orientation. So this is portrait, landscape, landscape right. Sometimes it's also interesting to go for an iPad. So now you see the small indicators. It's redoing the layout for the iPad. Not done so much. The problem is if you have so many variants, it might take some time. Okay, maybe I just go back to. And in the recent section, I just used the last one. And then we go, so we had the orientation variants. Then we have dynamic type variants. This is when the user changes in the settings and the accessibility if they have reading problems and they want to set the text really large. So we have here really small text. And then if I go down, this is making it bigger and bigger. And you see I have here really big text. In some cases it looks very stupid, like this. So we have to at some point talk about layout adjustments for, there are some tools where we can adjust the layout depending on how much space we have left. And in that is going to be very useful to have this variance. Okay, I'm going to go back to the selectable. And then I have the canvas device settings. So this was the light and dark mode. If I, for example, only want to prototype for dark mode right now, I can choose this because this is a little bit faster because I don't run 2 previews, depending on your computer and Xcode. If you have a very complex code base, it might be worth to just use the small parts, and we can also use the orientation for landscape. And then here, this, so I can see everything, all the settings that I choose, dark, landscape, and large accessibility. Maybe I just undo everything. This is the button for preview on device, on real device. So for this, you need to actually plug it in. And then you need to do some settings, waiting for connect. Okay, maybe I should test this some other time. I need to have the right iOS version for this feature. And this is iOS 15, so need to also have the right one. Okay, maybe just turn this off. Yeah, if you want to see the preview for different devices, you need to change it by selecting different build target. You can also do that programmatically with code. So this is our with preview, not really sure of device. In this case, I use the preview device name of a string. I can also use SE. Okay, this one it does not. Okay, you need to have the correct name. But even though I chose my Mac, it shows now this iPhone X. So you can override this if you want to. This is more the old style. Fixed size, 300 by 300. So now it's really only doing the smallest size. I'm going to take this one because I have actually quite a lot. And we're going into the title view because here I have the small title and I know I'm having a rather small view and I can zoom in more. It's nice. This is because I am... Okay, if you choose live preview for the Mac, it actually runs it in a preview window. Okay, this is not expandable. Okay, you have to press your bring forward. Maybe I go for selectable. Okay, it seems not to like me. Okay, try again with the iPhone. Okay, so the live preview, it will use the device. This is because it's actually interactable. If you go for the selectable, then we only have this smaller area. So I can actually make this 200. So now I don't have this huge wide area anymore. Especially interesting is if you want to have multiple of them. I need to group this. A group is another similar to a stack, it's just not giving it any, it's a container. So this is hello second. I did add now 2 different preview versions, which you can see by these 2 boxes up here. In order to make them a little bit more differentiable, I use this preview display name. So I'm calling this here second, and you see this name is appearing up here. So I can go between these 2. So for example, you want to see how the title looks if you have a very short title and a really long one. And then you can have 2 different versions. In some of the older projects, you will see this more. Also in the documentation and the sample projects. So just have a look at the preview, what they use there. Sometimes they produce too much. If you have this kind of, instead of having 2 different ones here, I can also make this to appear together in the same preview. So if I use a stack, And then I'm actually going to take this part out. Remove. Okay, maybe I leave the preview name in. So the VStack is another view. So the preview will treat this as one preview. And you see everything together. Whereas when I had the group, I have completely different previews. It treats them as two different previews. And I have here two different simulators, versions, implementations. So just for you to know that if you don't see anything and you just add stuff here, try to format this a little bit better. If you, because we had this inspector to see which view is which view, sometimes you actually don't know. You're running the project in the simulator, and now I'm like, yeah, where is, if it's complex, if you work on somebody else's project, you're like, yeah, where is this actually? Which file do I need to change to have this button changed? And we have here, make some space. Here, I have the debug view hierarchy. So here where the environment overrides, where I could change the, again, all of this for the simulator. Not for the preview, for the simulator. And here the hierarchy. So you can see another version of my simulator. Here's a slider where you can rotate it to see better how it works. Maybe just don't do it too much. So let's tap on this button. Okay. You can go up here. This is the hierarchy of how many is used. And somewhere here you can see the file content view. Or actually here on the left, there's Windows with a hosting view controller. This is the wrapper for the bridge to UIKit, with the hosting view and the content view in the middle, and then all of the views that I have here. So now I know, oh, it's in the content view, and I can do that in the content view. You can also see here some of the stacks. So here I have a horizontal stack, and here I have a vertical stack. This is the content view. If you want to get out of this, again, there's this play button, and we have left the debug hierarchy view. Okay, if I stop, you see I need to start the preview, or the live preview to be more precise. So just switch down here between these different options for the preview and zoom in and zoom out. That's the most important ones for the preview.